CERCLL is basically, well, it's a language resource center, and some of you have the big brochure that is about all the language resource centers in the U.S. There are 15 of them, so we're one of 15. And what the language resource centers are meant to do, to put it very briefly, is to get more people in the United States, more Americans, learning not just foreign languages, but less commonly taught languages. Okay, so with the way we thought we would do this is, in fact, the way that the government thinks about the centers, which is that we are to do projects. And we have 12 projects for this round. And we thought we would have the project, all the project directors are here, and we thought we'd have each project director briefly say what their project is about. So you get a sense of the projects we're doing, the variety, the kinds of things that we're interested in. So we are going to start with innovative pedagogies and global simulation for business, educating global entrepreneurs for global trade, and the project director is Beatrice.
This is actually a continuing project in some ways, in that in the previous grant cycle we already had a global simulation project, but which was really geared towards more general language teaching and for intermediate students. This one is meant for more advanced students, and we'll be targeting in particular business language, okay, business culture. What else should I say about this? So far we're thinking about doing 3 languages, but that will really depend on who is interested, who can do it, when, and so on. The first one, we have actually a collaboration with the Center for Latin American Studies, as one of the global simulation for business is going to be in Brazilian Portuguese.
Okay, so the next one is hypermedia text using multimodal text annotation to promote cultural literacy, and the project director is Chantelle Warner.
I don't know if I'm supposed to stand somewhere.
I don't know.
I'm just going to stand here.
Do it.
Okay, hi. This is also in some ways an extension of a previous project that was not led by me, but was led by Robbie Ariev. And the project seeks to create hypermedia texts with cultural annotations, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But I want to mention the other collaborators too. Robbie Ariev is continuing on this project, Katia da Costa Bezerra, Giuseppe Cavatorta, and Asli Usitz. So we're going to be creating text in Portuguese, German, Arabic, and Turkish, and Italian. And what we're looking to do is, whereas the previous project created hypertexts more focusing at the beginning to intermediate level, we'll be moving to the intermediate to advanced level, where you increasingly have this problem that we might describe as a sort of I don't get it syndrome, where there's nothing clearly identifiably linguistically that the students are struggling with, but they have this sense that the text isn't speaking to them, they don't understand what it's talking about. And this is in a way, I think, a problem of contextualization. And a lot of the times we try to deal with that using this metaphor of cultural background. And so we present background, we bring background in as something against which you read the text. And what we're trying to do here is adopt another model of contextualization, which looks at intertextuality. So in creating the text, we'll be creating cultural annotations, which will first be identifying hot words in texts and poems, short stories, and maybe short journalistic prose pieces. And these words will link out to a number of different texts in a very broad multimodal sense, so film clips, images, short text excerpts from works. And so the idea is that the students will then, through these words that will act as nodes out to these hypertexts, come into contact with a cultural context which is really in the excess of what they could ever deal with. And that brings us to the second part of the project, which is the pedagogical materials, because the students will be coming in with different backgrounds, in a sense, different access to the cultural materials, and in class negotiating those materials, and starting to become aware of the fact that cultural literacy is a process and a process of negotiation, rather than something that's a static backdrop. So the idea is that hopefully they'll start to feel more and more of themselves like participant users of the text, rather than outsiders looking into this field of cultural meaning to which they barely have any access to.
The next project is Games to Teach, developing digital game-mediated foreign language literacies. project director John Reinhardt, but he's also going to talk about the last one on all the way over here, which is Playing Languages, Digital Gaming and Foreign Language Education, a hybrid conference for research and practice. So he's been doing both, since he's doing both.
Okay, well, I see a lot of familiar people in here who are familiar with my work and things that I've been doing with games. I'm sure a lot of you also saw Julie Sykes give her talk at the SLAC, the roundtable. And our project is about using games, digital games, which is video games, computer games, handheld games, and even thinking about game dynamics in the second and foreign language classroom. We're working with trying to focus on less commonly taught languages, so we're looking at Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Korean, and then German and Spanish, because those are the languages that Julie and I work with.
Maybe Dari or Pashto.
Maybe some of those others, but the idea is to find games out there that are vernacular games, which means non-educational games, and think about how these games can be adapted as materials for language learning. So this involves really thinking about games as texts and practices. We're thinking of them as social practices where people are doing things with games. So one of the frameworks we're looking at right now is an idea of interaction with games, interaction through games, and interactions around games. And we're thinking about how people can experience language in the game, and then think about language about the game. So we're trying to use different frameworks to come up with something that we can apply then to these games. So some of the products that we're working on, we have a blog that you can visit. We've already got a lot of stuff up there. The URL is Games to Teach. I think it's in probably some of this material you have. .wordpress.com. It's our main outreach tool. We have we have some publications there. We have one publication up. We will have more publications up by the end of the summer, and we list sort of what those are going to be. We have links to many online resources, including games that you can download, reviews, trade and academic journals. So the academic journals are computer-assisted language learning, but they're also game studies and gaming, educational gaming. Some of the things that we're posting about: how to get started, how to choose a game to use in the second language classroom, applying game design theory, some testimonies from around the web of people who've used games to learn language and how have they done it. It's been sort of, it's not really done in an organized, those people aren't using any sort of existing frameworks, they're sort of just doing it on their own because they realize they can. So the idea is to look at some of these testimonies and these experiences and see, well, how could we use that in informal educational environments? How games may offer a solution to current educational crises, comments on current events, so conferences that we go to, different things like there's an interesting educational, there's like a games mediated school that's being developed, we sort of comment on. Anyway, the blog's got this stuff. We also have a survey, so if you do visit, please take our survey. We're trying to sort of measure our impact, our outreach. So some of the materials we'll be developing then. Classroom materials for working with these particular games, these particular languages. The ones, for example, that I'm working with right now, there's a game called Siedler, which is the Settlers. It's sort of a strategy management game, simulation management game, where you kind of have to develop a little village, and then you have to like create farms, and then find a way to defend your village. And this is all in German. The game is in German, designed by Germans, and so the idea is to create materials that can go around that for intermediate advanced learners of German. We're also working with one, a Japanese one called Boku no Natsu Yasumi, which is about a little kid who has an adventure. He goes to Hokkaido for a summer vacation to live with his aunt and uncle. And he does there are these little mini games in it, like he collects beetles and he does little different things. So the idea is, how can we use this to teach Japanese? So we have some white papers, academic level working papers, and these are sort of papers that Julie Sykes and I are in the process of publishing, and so we have sort of working copies of them up online that people can look at, and you can't actually use it, you can't cite it until it's actually published, but it's up there and for people to read and hopefully give us some feedback on. We're developing a manual And the manual will be for second language teachers and education professionals on how to evaluate, design, and implement these sort of game-enhanced second language learning activities. And then we have a summer workshop, which will be, I think, offering every year, maybe every other year, I'm not sure. But the first one is this summer, May 31st. That's actually coming out pretty soon. It's a two-day workshop, 9 to 4 both days. But I think
everybody has a brochure about all the workshops.
so the description's in there, and there's more description of the workshop on the blog. But we'll be talking about, we'll be playing games. We'll be thinking about designing games, designing the materials that go around games, talking about a lot of these different issues. So that's sort of what we have with this project. And I should also mention that this is also sort of an extension of a previous project in the previous cycle that was called Games to Learn. And so this is Games to Teach. It's not an original title. Other people have actually used it, I found out since then. But it's sort of an extension, and we're thinking about just creating useful materials that people can use. So finally, the other thing, that's the last project here, is a conference that we're going to be hosting, that as far as we know will be the first conference on game-mediated second and foreign language teaching. Because there are lots of conferences on educational gaming, there are lots of conferences on computer-assisted language learning and on language learning, but sort of we're trying to have something that might be one of the first. And we've decided that we're going to make it a hybrid conference, meaning that we'll have sessions here, and anybody who's on campus can participate in those sessions, but we'll also be broadcasting them, webcasting them, and we'll offer people the technology that they can present from afar through the web to people, and we'll have these up. And we're still working on the structure, but it'll be a hybrid conference about this, and we'll invite people. We'll have it open, but we'll have a lot of invitations of people who Julie Sykes and I have identified as being players, big players in the field. So. Okay,
so now we go on to materials and products, and the first one is Study Abroad, the Assessment of Cultural Intelligence. And that's Peter Ecke.
Yes, thank you very much. Why is this project relevant? Research has shown that there are a number of study abroad programs that send students over to another country, and the students come back with sometimes even more negative attitudes about the target culture that they've spent maybe a month or two or a semester abroad, but they come back having learned relatively little, and then sometimes even having encountered tension and conflicts with the other culture. And this negatively affected their attitudes. So this suggests that probably these students may not have been prepared optimally for these study abroad stays. And the project that we are doing is trying to address this because on the other hand there's a big potential, in particular learning about another culture, and not only about language and develop language skills during study abroad. So we are trying to develop teaching materials and particularly instruments for the assessment of cultural intelligence that we very broadly understand here as knowledge about the other culture, awareness of oneself and the others, and specific skills that the students develop in order to function optimally in that other culture. We're trying to address the need for ready-to-use materials, easily adaptable materials and instruments for the teaching and assessment of cultural intelligence, and hope to develop an assessment battery that consists of a number of instruments, traditional tests of knowledge about the culture, but also surveys, questionnaires, journals, reflective journals, and simulation games, particularly on critical incidents that students might experience during study abroad. And we are going to work on a manual that shows project directors or teachers how to adapt these instruments to their programs, and possibly also to other languages. The languages that we'll be working on are Russian and German, but we are open to expanding and perhaps also working on other languages and cultures. Yeah, so the objective on the one hand is the development of materials. We are also having a research component. We are piloting these materials in 2 study abroad programs in Germany and Russia. And we are hoping to publish these instruments and making them accessible. Hopefully the impact of the project is developing materials to teach and assess cultural intelligence. Hopefully this will affect also the teaching of culture during study abroad positively. And hopefully it will assist program directors in evaluating their study abroad programs, the effectiveness of these programs, and contribute to teachers, program directors, students, parents, assessment literacy. Project participants are myself. It's a relatively small project in CERCLL as the program director, Del Phillips in the Russian department as consultant, and I expect to have 2 assistants, most likely from the SLAT program, 1 proficient in Russian and 1 proficient in German. The funding period of the project is 2012-14, so we are kind of in a pre-development stage. We still have a little bit of time, but in 2012 the program officially starts.
So the next one, yeah, is the Percolate project, and you're probably wondering why Percolate? What is Percolate? It was an acronym actually that run true to us. Okay, the full title of the project is actually Professional Development for College Foreign Language Teachers. And it turns out in Percolate, and we like the idea of the drip, how it, you know, it goes little by little, and it kind of goes through various layers, so it can reach, you know, more and more as we go through. So what is actually this project? It's going to be, the project is dedicated to developing a set of professional development materials to be used to prepare foreign language teaching assistant for teaching in a 4-year multidisciplinary, multiliteracy curriculum. And some of you who are interested in professional development probably are aware that for a long time, I would say for the past 15 to 20 years, language program directors have been kind of bemoaning, complaining about the way professional development for foreign language teachers is actually conducted. And this front-loading approach that we currently have, which is method course the first semester you teach, and that's pretty much what you're going to get, is clearly inadequate. So the purpose of the project, in view of the shortcomings that have actually been highlighted, my colleague Heather Allen, who is currently at the University of Miami but is moving to the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the fall, we're going to be working on developing 8 modules. And these modules will be foregrounded in a multiliteracies approach, wherein the goal of foreign language teaching and learning is to develop the development of literacy. And the way we envision these modules is that they will be there as supplementary material that you can use throughout the 2 or 4 years or 5 years that graduate students are part of your program. And the module topics that we have kind of settled on, but it's still, you know, a work in progress. One would be rethinking the teaching of reading, designing meaning. The other one, rethinking the teaching of writing and the role of genre. Orality in the classroom, scaffolding participation, listenability, the features of highly listenable text, formulating learning goals and objectives in a literacy-oriented approach, integrating online interaction, designing assessment and evaluation in a literacy-oriented approach, and also visual literacy, supporting learners to discriminate and interpret visual objects, images, and symbols. And within each of these modules, we would have notes, slides, text. We're also going to create 8 different webinars. The first one will be shot this summer with Rick Kern, and we're thinking of other people as well. And where we'll have activities in various languages, and that's where actually graduate students in SLAT in various languages will start becoming involved, because along with these modules, we want to have sample activities that actually tell the instructors, okay, what are we talking about concretely here? How can it be implemented? And so on. And each of the modules will be developed with two goals in mind. So to help foreign language TAs reflect on how their beliefs and experiences, both as language learners and teachers, impact their own instructional practices. But also the other goal of the module will be to facilitate through structured inquiry and reflection FLTA's embracing of theoretical concepts presented in the module, which lead them to gradually rethink and reorient the way they approach teaching. And that, in particular, is going to be done through an inquiry-based model called lesson study. And so the first workshop, Heather Allen and myself will be conducting the first workshop this summer. And then next summer we're going to have a second workshop, and this one will be targeted at language program directors. We are actually working in association with the American Association of University Supervisors and Coordinators, who will be funding part of that workshop. And what we'll do is that there will be a call for participation in the workshop, and we hope to be giving 10 stipends based on the proposal that will be sent out. That's it.
Thank you. Oh, do you want to say which languages?
Languages, well, I guess there is a conflict of interest here. Heather Allen and myself will be doing French materials. But we plan on having German, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Russian, Chinese, and Japanese. Yes, there is Italian. Sorry about that. It's part of it.
Two colleagues of mine and I, when I was back on the East Coast, wrote and published these two books. And later, I mean, they're not with us anymore. One of them died, of a cancer, and the other has semi-retired in Leipzig, in Germany, and is not interested in this project anymore. And I receive a lot of emails about these two volumes, which is primarily for elementary level Persian. And they either loved it or hated it. There was no middle ground to say that it was an okay book. But some of those who loved it often asked me if there were any intermediate level or advanced level of this book, or if I had planned to write them. So that was the inspiration to start writing it. And I spent about 1 year and a half, around 2000, to write the outline and construct the structure of the book, in terms of grammar, culture, vocabulary, and so on and so forth. That was a very time-consuming part. And then I started writing it very quickly, some of these things. And then I lost interest because, basically because there are too many things to do. In area studies, the faculty wears so many different hats. It's not like, you're a professor of Chaucer or Shakespeare, and that's all you do, and that's all the students you get for. So busy, and I couldn't do it, and until CERCLL came around, and it was so invigorating for me to see someone is actually still interested in textbooks, because I mean around mid 2000, I mean the structures of Persian language also were fascinated by these funny YouTube clips. Which they adopted and turned into teaching materials, and indeed there were fundings for them. Even the government would pay them to do this, and no one cared about textbooks until Linda and Kate and Susan came along, and they were actually asking me questions about the lessons. Also, I thought I have to go back to this project, and I'm very grateful to their support, and they're getting along. There are four volumes, and then which covers intermediate and advanced level, and we've been using them for a number of years now. I'm constantly revising them when I get time and chance and money. And interestingly, a number of other campuses are adopting them on a regular basis, and I think that you may have received two emails, or one. I mean, I got two, Princeton and Amherst, and they want these the full set. And so, thank you all.
Thank you, Kamran. Okay, so now we go to professional development and community connections, and the first one is Kathy Short, who has bridging global cultures and world languages in K through 8 classrooms.
Yes. So our focus is, these fell off that I knew about. Our focus is really working in K-8 classrooms where very seldom is language being taught. And so what we're really looking at are ways of encouraging some initial explorations of language and culture around less commonly taught languages, and with the hopes that as students encounter opportunities in high school and college, they'll be more likely to pursue those languages. And we're doing that also in the perspective of professional development. We started off in the last grant cycle, we developed language and culture book kits. So we put together book kits around the Korean language and Arabic languages, and Arabic-speaking, and then Arabic-speaking cultures, particularly in the Middle East. So the Korean kit really focuses on South Korea, and both kits have picture books, 12 to 15 picture books, primarily in English, because we're focusing a lot on culture. As a way to get in, they were carefully chosen by cultural insiders to reflect a range of perspectives within those cultures. It has some novels that can be, 3 to 4 novels that can be read aloud in the classroom, and then has some beginning language teaching materials. And then we have a notebook that has a lot of supportive kinds of materials in there as well, along with websites and things like that. And initially what we did was we did professional development workshops at the university, invited classroom teachers in, and then set up study groups. And the kits are available to go out in the classrooms free for a month. And so, once the teachers had done some professional development, they could have the kits. What we found is that coming in for a workshop is difficult. And so we started playing with the model where we send an international consultant out to the classroom with the kit instead of bringing teachers here. So that's what we're playing with this grant cycle. And so right now we have 2 international consultants, and one is working with the Arabic kit, and the other one is working with a Korea kit. The kits are, and the kit goes out, as I said, teachers, librarians signing up for the kits are going out for a month. And then, what happens is the international consultant, who's a graduate student from the university, meets with the teacher, takes the kit out, explains what's in the kit, goes through all the materials, and then sets up what makes sense in this classroom. Whether it's coming in and doing usually it's language instruction is what the teachers most want. And elementary kids love language. I mean, like they're just thrilled. The librarian, this is at the middle school, it was Doolin. She, I don't think she wasn't sure how the kids would respond and didn't expect excitement. And Mi Kyung Chang went out and gave the kids, Hangul has a very systematic language. And so, after a 30-minute lesson, the kids already had a sense of how the language works because it is so systematic. And throughout the day, they were coming back to the teacher, to the librarian, and saying, "Look what I've done! Look what I've done!" And that kept going on. And so there was it's exciting to see, I think, how the K-8 kids really respond to language. So what we're trying to do, we're continuing with that. Right now we have a Portuguese language and culture kit that's been being developed this spring, and Naya is taking it out, primarily focusing on Brazil in terms of the culture, and that's going out for field testing right now in classrooms. And then we have a Chinese, Mandarin and Russian that will be developed next year. And we're also, Richard, and this is Richard Clift, he and I have been working on this project together, and he'll be here to answer questions. I do have to leave for another meeting. But Richard and I were just talking that we've been loaning the kits out without the international consultants as well, because in the fall we didn't have that set up yet, because the grant had just been funded. And we're talking about maybe doing some kind of summer workshop where we'll pull in the people that have been regularly getting the kits, and really be able to talk with them about the kit and explore some of the different kinds of strategies that people have been using. But so far, I mean, I'm really excited by this. And I should also say, when it goes out into the school, it can be a teacher or it can be a group of teachers. But we're getting really good responses. We're really excited about the possibilities. The other thing that we're working on is to look at, we're particularly interested in how these resources on global cultures and languages influences the perspectives of the teachers in relationship to intercultural understanding. So we're also, we'll be working the second year in developing some measures to get at that, to look at and while, you know, the kits are being used directly with the kids, what we're hoping is that the kits and the kind of materials we're sending, the support we're sending with the kits, serve as a really powerful form of professional development as well for the teachers. And we spent a lot of time, I should tell you, with the kits really thinking about cultural authenticity for the materials that are in there, and a really wide range of perspectives on the culture, from historical to contemporary. One of the things we find with the literature is that both historical and folklore tend to be what's emphasized in terms of what's available primarily in picture books. And so we've really had to work hard to make sure that there really are a range of perspectives, and that urban as well as rural, modern as well as historical, although, you know, and just the different sort of range of experiences within a culture are actually focused on within the kids. Yeah.
So our next one is on legal registers for interpretation, training materials, and resources for heritage language speakers. The project director is Roseanne Gonzalez, who couldn't be with us today, but her
Armando,
her sidekick is here.
And I brought a little handout, and I'll pass this out. And sorry, there's a typo already. It went from 1, 2 to 4. I don't know where 3 left off, so sorry for that. Really quick, a little bit of background. For 30+ years, Dr. Gonzalez in our center has been dealing with developing bilinguals into interpreters and translators. In the legal setting, the medical setting, community, education recently. And in the last decade or so, because of the drastic changes in demographics, there's been an increasing need to train in languages other than Spanish. Therefore, and what we refer to as less commonly taught languages, or languages of lesser diffusion is the technical term for us. And our project will focus on 3 things. It's producing a handbook of interpreter services. The resources and the materials available for Spanish interpreters is not an issue. There's plenty of materials that deal with that. But as the populations of other languages have increasing needs, whether it's access to justice or access to healthcare, there's no real established literature to help interpreters do their jobs, or to help language service coordinators guide the interpreters in doing their jobs. So the purpose of that handbook is to standardize the ethics, the protocols when it comes to languages other than Spanish in healthcare, in community, or in law. The other part of the program is to develop a 5-day, what we refer to as Train the Trainer program. And we call it Train the Trainer to maximize the impact of the program. Rather than just training interpreters, which might decrease our number of participants, we plan to recruit on a regional and a national scale actual trainers that are willing to come to Tucson, learn the methodology, learn the curriculum, then take that curriculum with them to their respective cities so that they can duplicate the lessons learned and hopefully create the same impact that we will create here in Tucson in other cities around the U.S. So that's the train the trainer. And the last part is actually to develop and administer a 2-day workshop for interpreters. Also standardize the curriculum, have an exportable model, if you want to call it, to be able to train the bilingual individuals in this community as far as becoming Russian English interpreters for courts, for hospitals, for communities, whatever the community needs are, schools, education, and also be able to export that curriculum to whoever might be willing to adopt it nationwide. So those are the 3 goals of the project. I handed something out as far as summarizing that, and our website will be up to date with this project as well. We don't, our work has begun as far as planning and identifying linguistic and cultural talent for this project, but we don't really implement them until year 3 and year 4. But I'm handing that out so that if you're interested in participating, joining us from a linguistic and cultural standpoint, by all means, contact us.
Yeah, and we should say it is Russian.
Russian is the target language, correct?
Target language for this.
May I ask you why Russian?
Why Russian? We had a number of different languages in mind: Arabic, Vietnamese, Cantonese, Russian. I think we met a couple of times and we defined it as one of the languages that CERCLL wanted to represent, and it's up there as far as the top 10 languages as far as needs and as far as representation within the legal and healthcare. So that's why Russian was selected.
And also there, as you know, Russian speakers in the community. We wanted to do a language that is represented in the Tucson community. So let's hope it's okay to adjust.
And it is, and we did some analysis. It is top 6 within the community, but it's also top 6, at a national level. So, thank you.
Okay, the next one is K-16 initiatives, professional development for foreign language educators. I'm the project director for that. Essentially, one of the goals of any of these language resource centers is to bring to the community in which the language resource center is located, to bring some of what we do to that community. And what this project is for is to reach out as far as possible: Tucson, southern Arizona, Southwest, and even the U.S. And probably not internationally, but certainly sometimes we've had international visitors who come and or participate in what we're doing. Our next category is knowledge sharing, and that was our way of saying that we're going to put on conferences and share what we've learned in a larger setting of conferences, especially national and international conferences. So the first one is our intercultural conference, intercultural competence conference. You all have the call for papers. We've talked about it a little bit. Beatrice and I are the co-directors of that, and of course she's gone. She had to go off to a meeting. So I'll just say a little bit. It'll be our 3rd one. We had a first one in 2008, which was very local, but it brought in 100 people. And we thought, wow, people are interested in this. So then we did another one, 2010. These were all in January. That one was in January. And had 276 people who came from all over the world. We were quite impressed at the number of people and where they came from. Enormous amount of interest in this issue. So we're going to do it again, 2012, January. And the theme of the first 2 were basically general conferences on intercultural competence. This next one will be on what we're calling immersive environments. So it can include things like study abroad and service learning and community learning and so forth. Can be pedagogies that are immersive, like global simulation that Beatrice talked about, but other kinds of games, the ones that John talked about, and other kinds of immersive pedagogies. And then also things like bilingual schools, ways in which classrooms or schools are set up to varying 2 or more languages and cultures as part of the regular way in which language is taught.